All right, so let's look at research. Now, first of all, if you are like a statistics student or you've already taken intro to psychology, this is going to be so just kindergarten level because I'm not going to go super deep in this. This is an introductory course, and so we're going to cover just some of the small basics about research. Now, it's really important to understand that all research starts with a question, and although we may think we know the answers, we want some scientific validation to say that our answers are indeed correct. They may make sense to us, but we need research to actually verify that indeed what we think is happening really is happening. All right, so everybody I'm sure is familiar with the DARE program. We're looking at a program that is implemented in schools, has been working since 1998, still going on. And about 80% of our schools are participating in this. And the whole purpose is wonderful. We believe that if we can introduce all of the bad things that could happen, and how to say no and all these other things when it comes to drugs, alcohol, and smoking, then we can prevent these kids from starting this bad behavior. And it's a good thought. If I teach them when they're young, they'll remember it when they're older. Now, the problem is that when we actually started to crunch the data, we found that there was no significant decrease in the use of any of these things. They were still just as likely to use drugs or alcohol or smoking. Now, we did find that there was a short-term, didn't last forever, but a short-term increase in self-confidence and self-esteem, which we think we find in anything where children feel they're participating in a program. So even though it doesn't work, we're still funding it. And as a researcher myself, this is where I have a problem. If the research says it's not helping, then why are we doing this? So good question. All right. So anyway, before we dive in, we need to understand that we really do have these 5 steps. Whenever we're going to study something, it starts someplace and it ends someplace. So the first step is always going to be, we've got a question. We want to find out, does coffee really cause us to be alert? Does stress really make us remember things better? Does X equal Y? We start off with a question, but what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is simply an educated guess. It's how I think my study's going to go. It makes sense to me. I think that this is what I'm going to go. Or I think this is the way it's going to go. And so this is what I do. I use this hypothesis to begin my study. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test that hypothesis, and I'm going to use one of several different ways to do this. And we'll talk about 5 of those different ways in a moment. But I have to test it. So I've got to go through those clinical trials. I have to go through, all of the whatever case study, experiment, survey, whatever. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect that data, and then I'm going to see, what do the numbers tell me? What does the findings indicate? Is my hypothesis correct, or is it incorrect? And then what I have to do then is go backwards on my slide. Then I have to do is report my findings. So you guys are looking for scientific journal articles. Those are actually findings of other people's research. So what I want to do is I want to write an article. It needs to be peer reviewed. It's going to end up in a journal, hopefully, to explain what I have found. Now, there's some good reasons for putting this. Not only would it make my name look great because I can now say I've been on 5 publications, but also it helps the community, because if I write that article that fully describes what I did, that's just one test. And so if I say that these M&Ms are going to cure cancer and my findings say yes, it will, then we want somebody else to do the same exact research to see if it is indeed just a fluke or does it truly work. So by reporting my findings, they can follow my research to see if it was correct or not. So again, I want to know the answer to something. I go ahead and determine what I think is going to happen. Then I'm going to figure out how to test it and do the testing, gather those data and draw a conclusion, and then I'm going to fully report my findings. All right, so just as general category, we have this category called the descriptive types of research or experimental. Now the difference is, if it is part of the descriptive methods, it has no cause and effect. In other words, this does not make this happen. However, in experimentation, we are proving that such and so, X does cause Y. So some of the lists that are on the descriptive measure, descriptive method is going to be naturalistic observation. We're going to go ahead and look at these in depth in a minute. The next one is case study, survey, and correlation. So these four cannot show cause and effect. We just run our tests and we report the findings. So it doesn't mean this makes this happen. We just say this is the findings that we've come across. With the experimental stage, what we are saying is this does cause that. So it's its own description. All right, so now let's break these down. So if I'm looking at naturalistic observation, what I'm doing is I'm studying someone or something in its natural habitat. Okay, why do I do that? It's because it's the only way to actually see that real behavior. So for instance, if I wanted to study the mating habits of the rhinos, I'm not going to go and get some cute, sexy young rhino, clean her all up and, put perfume on her, put some earrings in her ears and put her in my laboratory and see what happens. I have to go to where they are. The only way I'm going to see mating habits is to go where they are. And so that's why I would use this. So always in your, on your tests, your quizzes, it'll say which is the best way to study. Stop and think about that. Is this the only way that I can get the true data is by observing it? All right, so we've got some pros and cons of everything. Now, if I actually look and decide that I want to study the mating habits of the rhino and I go to Africa, what we get to see is a real behavior. It is real behavior in real situations, and so that's a really strong thing to be finding. But also we have this issue of we may never even see the behavior at all. Let's say that we go to this place in Africa and we didn't realize that that there was something had killed all the vegetation, and so the rhinos have moved. They're not here anymore. And so I might not actually find that out. Now that's going to be kind of a weird thing, because hopefully I would do my investigation and find that out. But another thing that could happen is it could take a long time. For whatever reason, the rhinos are not mating right now at this particular location. But also we can look at some things like interference occurring. Now I want you to picture this. You want to study, you're at a school and you want to see who is aggressive. Is it more boys, more girls? And so you're at an elementary school, you're out on the playground, and what you want to do is find out how aggressive, who's more aggressive, boys or girls. So you have your list of aggressive actions, and you're going to go ahead and check mark every time you see an aggressive action. Was it a boy or a girl? Now the problem is that unbeknownst to us, the teacher may have been having a terrible time with these students and said, if everyone will behave, then you get ice cream this afternoon when we come in from recess. So of course I'm not going to see any aggressive behavior. The kid wants ice cream. So these are some of the negative things that may happen that may not make this great. But again, if it's going to be behavior that I cannot study any other way, it has to be naturalistic observation. Again, you got good side, you got bad side. All right, the case study. Now, a case study is going to be a small group of people that you study for a long period of time. So when we do this is when the effect is not immediate. For instance, let's just say that I create a new therapy that is supposed to help people that are codependent. I can give them one therapy session and boom, they're not instantly cured of this codependency. I have to make sure that for years they don't fall back into this codependent relationship. And so it's going to take some time. So if there's something that we're studying that doesn't happen immediately, that we can't just give you this pill and boom, we see results, it might need a case study. For instance, do study groups cause lasting friendships? And I went to my grad school with basically the same 5 or 6 classmates, and we took many of our classes together. Well, one of them ended up, she's my friend today, and I graduated back in 2000. And so we've remained friends this whole time. Now, the only way to find out if we actually have lasting friendships, maybe, would be to go back with these 5 people, and I'm going to study them throughout these years to find out who remained in touch and who didn't, who, had these different, closer attributes to friendships than the other. So I'm going to have this small group that is going to take some time to develop. And so the beauty of this is I actually get to see things very up close. So if maybe I have some new residential treatment for people who maybe are mentally deficient, and I want to see if this new, way of doing things helps them with real life situations. So the good thing is I not only get to see are they doing well, I get to see many, many other things because I'm watching them closely over a long period of time. I may get to see them grow intellectually. I may get to see them grow in relationships. I may get to see them, develop cooking, where they hadn't had before. So I get to see more than just that behavior. I get to see all this extra stuff as well. Now the con is if I got to study you for 5, 10, 15 years, there's even a study, it's called the longevity study. They want to find out what are some of the contributor factors to long life. And so this has been going on for 75 years, about 75 years. So of course, it's not the same people that are handling the investigation. So we've had to pass the research on to other people, but they've been following the same people for like 75 years to see who lives the longest. So it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive to do this over a period of time. Also, if I'm studying, we're very mobile and we move not only from city to city, but state to state and even country to country. And so I may have a large dropout rate. If I'm studying something for 10 years, there's no way I'm going to have the same number of people in that group for that entire 10 years. So those are some of the bad part. Okay, something that we probably have all been a part of is a survey, and these are the easiest and fastest things to do. A survey is simply a questionnaire, and it can be yes, no, or how much do you agree on a scale of 1 to 5, etc., etc. And so it's a questionnaire. So when I might use this is if I have a huge group of people. Think about it. I can't sit down and interview 5,000 people, but I can send out a survey with a push of a button. So surveys are wonderful when there's large groups of people, but also surveys are usually based on only opinion. I can't find the cure for cancer in a survey. I have to actually look at something as an opinion when I get it back. So we have marketing people that use surveys all the time. They want to be able to figure out what packaging color most attracts people. What should I put on the front of the box if I want a woman to buy this? So it's going to be warm, fuzzy, children and puppies and kittens and all this. If I do a commercial and I want to sell a kid's toy, I've got to have tons of kids on there, to go ahead and show. And so we're going to survey people to find out those things that they like. And so we do this a lot. Market research is very big for when it comes to customer, filling customers' needs. Now, the great part, this is so simple. But like I said, push of a button, I can get a survey on out there, and it costs very little. So that's great. So again, large numbers, usually an opinion, very easy, costs very little. The problem is you're going to have some people that lie, and so you have to anticipate that that's going to be part of it. And we're not going to go into the computation, but there's a way to compute, well, there's probably this percentage that have lied, and then some people are like, what, I just want to get this over with. I don't even care how they answer. And so it just may be A and then D and then F and then A and then C and then, so they don't really care. They're just doing, this and that. So again, we compute this to look at the potential people that really aren't doing it correctly. All right, correlational method, I'm going to save for another video because it's much longer. So in the next video, I'm going to cover correlation and experimentation. So we'll see you in the next one.